Paul and Alex.
All right. Thanks so much, John Tucker. Alex Steele here alongside Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Intelligence Radio. We bring you all the top news in business, finance, and economics through our lens of our Bloomberg Intelligence team. They cover 2,000 companies and 130 industries all around the world. So apparently, we had a final policy statement finalized yesterday by the FDIC that could make it harder for bank M&A. So let's get more on this with Nathan Dean. He's Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst. He joins us now from D.C. Hey, Nathan, walk us through what this final policy statement says.
Yeah, so essentially what it says is that it's going to place more emphasis on certain aspects of bank M&A, like the impact on communities, competition, and so forth like that. And it changed the parameters that the FDIC in particular is going to look at when going forward with approvals. So if I'm Bank A and I'm trying to merge with Bank B, and as part of that merger, the FDIC, for example, decides that the south side of Chicago is going to be harmed, either due to, branch closures or lack of competition, the FDIC is going to come in and say, no, you can't do this. It should also be noted the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency finalized something very similar, not exactly the same, but essentially what we've been telling our clients is this. One, you've probably anticipated that bank mergers was difficult under the Biden-era regulators. That's going to continue. And two, this is easily reversible. So if President Trump wins in November, new leadership at the FDIC and the OCC next year could walk some of this back if they so choose.
Is this a solution in search of a problem here? I mean, if we had a swath of bank M&A that's disadvantaged people, have I missed that?
So, there's really two sides to this story. The first side is that a lot of this hasn't been updated since 1995 and 2008. So the Biden-era regulators and the FDIC in particular say, look, this is what we're just doing is codifying already what we're looking at. We're just making sure that it's now on paper so that banks are at least more transparent, or at least get a little bit more transparency in terms of that process. If you talk to the bankers, they're like, look, it's been difficult to begin with. And, going to, let's say, the Capital One Discover merger, this may not be so much of an anti-competitive issue, or there's not going to be much of a community impact. So it's really which side of the story do you believe in and which side of the story you are talking to. But, again, this is a codification of already existing, I think, theory and already existing behavior. Mm-hmm. And again, something that could change under a Republican administration.
I mean, that was totally one of my questions that Paul took, was like, what problem is this actually trying to address? And to the same point that recently we've had bank issues, just Jamie Dimon winds up buying the bank on a discount helped by the government. So, is that helping any of those problems?
No, and you bring up a great point. There were several comment letters to that, exactly saying, look, you put these, and these are some of the bank comment letters saying, look, you put these processes and these procedures in place, but then when the market goes down, we buy a bank over the weekend and you throw the playbook out and you say, let's just save the system. And so the bank's response is somewhat frustrating here. They're frustrated because in their eyes, the regulators put out these procedures, these processes, they put everything on paper. And then, when the market goes down and a solution needs to be found on the fast, they just, throw that all to the wayside and go forth. Ultimately, though, this is a little bit more of what we're seeing, though, with just democratic financial regulation in general, placing more emphasis on the community and the individual. Because before, when these bank mergers would have happened, you'd look at capital levels, management, risk to the system, and so forth like that. But now they're looking at the individual impact. Are people on the south side of Chicago going to be harmed by this? Are prices going to go up? So it's more of this economic populism side of the Elizabeth Warren side of the Democratic Party that's now making its way into these policy statements and these rules at the banking regulators.
So, I guess, what have we heard anything from the industry per se? Because one of the things I guess at least I learned during the recent round of weakness and failures of some of these small banks in the last couple of years was there's 5,000 small and community and regional banks out there. That's a lot compared to relative to Europe, for example, which doesn't employ that branch system as much. A lot of people are saying, aren't there too many branches anyway? Aren't there too many banks out there anyway?
It's funny. I was actually looking at the number of banks on the terminal just yesterday, and, since 1980, it's gone down fairly significantly to that 5,000, so level. But to your point, yes, that is somewhat larger compared to other countries, and there are a lot of small and community banks. But I would also just remember small and community banks, and, we usually use the term community banks for $10 billion in assets and below. these community banks usually have broad political support amongst both sides of the aisle here in Washington. Nobody wants to be seen throwing capital requirements or heavy regulation on a small community bank because there are a lot of aspects of this country where they're the only places that offer credit to farms, small businesses, and so forth like that. A lot of the big banks are, centralized in these cities. So, it's just a debate that both sides pay attention to. But what we're telling our clients is this, is that bank M&A is hard today. It will be hard tomorrow because of this. It will be hard tomorrow if Kamala Harris wins the presidency. But if President Trump wins the presidency, the layers of the onion could begin to peel off, and bank and M&A could be a little bit easier, say 2, 3, 4 years from now as a result of that.
That's just must be so confusing as a CEO or a CFO of a company, because you have to make a business plan today that may or may not have the same rules in play in 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just look at the Capital One Discover Financial merger. When that came out, the CEO of Capital One came out and said, look, we think it's going to be, resolved by the tail end of 2023. Here we are sitting in September, and I'm not sure many people believe that. So the idea here is that, a lot of companies want to have these speedy access to mergers. They want to be able to get it done. And from a, paper perspective of looking at it from the size, a combined Capital One Discover card size is still going to be below PNC. You're not going to have what's called a GSIB, one of the biggest banks as a result. So that should be fine. But ultimately, what the regulators are doing now is they're looking at, certain areas of the country saying, and I pick on Chicago because I'm from Chicago, is the south side of Chicago going to be harmed by this? And they're going by postcode. And if they think that there's issues there, they're going to slow the process down, investigate it even more. And it's much to the frustration of the banking industry where they just want to get these deals done and move on.
All right, Nathan, Mr. Chicago, you got 30 seconds. Explain to me how the city breaks up White Sox versus Cubs. How does that work?
South side White Sox, north side Cubs, suburbs Cubs.
All right, there you go. There you go. I mean, I guess it's big enough to support two teams, so kinda. All right, Nathan Dean, thanks so much for joining us here.